A young man named Kim Yu-chan, age 30, sits in his apartment in a residential area. He watches the news about a disease called COVID, which has caused a global pandemic. The Prime Minister announces that the government is considering extending social distancing level 2. The news also shows business owners from karaoke bars, gyms, and other high-risk places expressing frustration because they still cannot open. Yu-chan, who works as a personal trainer at a local gym, also worries about when he will be able to resume giving PT sessions, since this is how he makes a living. He checks his phone and thinks about when his friend might visit, even though that friend rarely comes around. With free time on his hands, he starts his unique reading while training routine by doing push-ups while reading. At that moment, his childhood friend Han Mingyu, also 30 and an entrepreneur, arrives at the door. Mingyu visits because they have not seen each other in a long while, and because Yu-chan is stuck at home without work. Yu-chan welcomes him in, and they settle down to eat chicken and drink non-alcoholic beer. Mingyu mentions that despite the difficult times, he still gets attention from women, which Yu-chan finds unsurprising. The two talk about Yu-chan's single life. Yu-chan believes dating is not a good idea these days and thinks it is inappropriate to approach gym members casually. He also feels that he has become too focused on fitness and work, making it difficult for him to hold conversations outside of business matters. Mingyu notes that Yu-chan still has not fixed that part of himself, even with all the time he spends at the gym. Yu-chan then receives a call from his boss, who informs him that the gym is closing permanently. Yu-chan expected this outcome since the gym has been shut down for a long time, but he now worries about what to do next and how to pay his rent. Seeing this, Mingyu suggests that Yu-chan try private tutoring, since PT work may not return soon. He explains that the daughter of a business acquaintance is taking the KSAT for the second time and needs help with writing composition. Mingyu reminds him that before becoming a gym enthusiast, Yu-chan studied literature and still reads many books. Yu-chan feels unsure because it has been years and he never focused on composition, but Mingyu tells him to prepare anyway before leaving. Yu-chan walks through the streets, thinking he should already be near the apartment building. He checks his phone and realizes he has been walking in the opposite direction. He becomes flustered, worrying that if he arrives late to his first tutoring session, he will lose the opportunity and get fired immediately. After walking for some time, he finds himself back at the station and finally accepts that his sense of direction is terrible. He looks around at the people passing by, hoping to find someone who lives nearby and can guide him. He notices a woman wearing a baseball cap, a dolphin-patterned autumn outfit, and striped sandals. He assumes she must be familiar with the area, so he approaches her and asks for directions. She tells him that Castle Apartments are close and offers to guide him there. He follows her, relieved and grateful. Within minutes, they arrive at the apartment building. Yu-chan thanks her, and she mentions that she also lives there. She asks which building he needs, and he explains that he is heading to the 20th floor. She responds that she lives on that floor as well. Yu-chan does not believe in fate, but the coincidence makes him pause. He ends up reasoning that the stranger he stopped randomly on the street actually lives in the same building and on the same floor. They enter the elevator together, and an awkward silence settles between them. Yu-chan feels suffocated by the quiet and wonders if he should speak. He sneaks a look at the woman, noticing she seems quite young. Since she is outside during daytime hours, he assumes she might be a college student doing virtual classes. She notices his stare and asks if he has something to say. He becomes flustered and comments about her living on the 21st floor, which she confirms. She then observes that he does not seem like someone visiting a girlfriend and asks if he is there to meet someone else. He almost blurts out that he has no girlfriend, but quickly corrects himself and says he is there to tutor someone. Internally, he scolds himself for nearly revealing too much. The silence returns, tense and heavy, and he debates whether to speak again, but decides she is probably tired of talking. A thought crosses Yu-chan's mind. He unconsciously hopes he can keep seeing the woman as a tutor, possibly because she guided him so politely. He quickly pushes the idea away, but he keeps glancing at her. He worries that if he continues staring, she will notice, so he tries to look elsewhere. Yet he feels frozen in place, unable to move, and their eyes meet again. He becomes flustered once more, unsure how to react. Just then, the elevator doors open, and he steps out quickly, thanking her. He feels relieved, as if the elevator has rescued him from the awkward moment. He walks to the door, where he is supposed to tutor, and rings the doorbell, introducing himself as the tutor Mingyu recommended. No one responds, so he rings the bell again, wondering what is wrong. At that moment, the woman from the elevator speaks to him. She asks him to step aside so she can enter the door code. Yuchan is surprised because she previously said she lived upstairs. She apologizes and admits she tricked him because he had been asking for directions to her home. She then introduces herself properly as Seol Chae-Won, the student he will be tutoring. She removes her mask to show her face and invites him inside. He feels shocked by the prank, but his surprise only grows when he sees the luxurious interior of her home. Chae-Won explains that her mother is out for a while and asks what they should do first. Yuchan suggests they begin the lesson. As they walk through the hallway, he takes in the expensive surroundings, realizing he has never been in a place like this before. He reminds himself to focus on tutoring instead of being overwhelmed by the environment. He notices a family photo album and sees another girl in the picture, wondering if she is Chae-Won's older sister. Chae-Won calls him into her room, and he follows. Inside, he feels awkward, realizing it has been a long time since he entered a girl's room. Cute dolls, cosmetics, and accessories fill the space, and he feels completely out of his element. Chae-Won calls to him again, and he steadies himself. He explains that he needs to evaluate her skills, so he gives her a composition test. They will review the results afterward and create a study plan. While she works on the test, Yuchan cannot calm down. His heartbeat grows faster, and he does not understand why. After a short while, Chae-Won tells him to sit on the bed instead of standing the whole time. Chae-Won's mother arrives home and notices that Yuchan has already begun the lesson. She immediately sees how casually Chae-Won is dressed and scolds her, telling her to change into something more respectable. She then apologizes to Yuchan, saying Chae-Won is usually not so careless. Yuchan assures her he does not mind. Chae-Won soon returns wearing the outfit her mother bought for her. Her mother looks pleased and comments that Chae-Won appears refined and pretty. Yuchan silently agrees, thinking that if someone told him Chae-Won was an idol trainee, he would believe it. He wonders how he did not realize earlier how pretty she is. Chae-Won's mother apologizes again for interrupting and leaves them to continue the lesson. As soon as she leaves, Chae-Won suddenly removes the dress she just changed into. Yuchan is stunned and confused by her behavior. Chae-Won states that the outfit feels too tight and uncomfortable, and she wants to start the lesson only after taking it off. She also asks him not to mention it to her mother. She adjusts her clothes casually, only to catch Yuchan staring in shock. She blushes, while Yuchan wonders if she completely forgot he was right beside her. Yuchan feels a sudden wave of panic and embarrassment that overwhelms him completely, causing him to excuse himself immediately and head to the restroom, leaving Chae-Won behind to continue with her lesson. As he steps out of the room, his mind races with confusion and frustration, wondering why he feels such unexpected excitement in a situation that should be completely ordinary. He thinks about the many girls he sees at the gym every day who wear revealing outfits, yet none of those encounters have ever affected him like this. To his shock, he notices Chae-Won's older sister in the hallway, dressed casually and clearly unprepared for visitors. He tries to compose himself and reassure his mind that he is there solely to tutor, but before he can, Chae-Won panics and raises an alarm, claiming that there is a pervert in the house. The commotion draws Chae-Won's mother, who quickly rushes in to see what is happening. She immediately realizes the misunderstanding and scolds Chae-Won for overreacting. Then she turns her attention to Yuchan and apologizes sincerely, admitting that her daughter's behavior is partly her fault because she did not raise her properly. Yuchan, feeling a mix of embarrassment and humility, insists that he also shares some responsibility for the situation, as it arose while he was present in the house. Meanwhile, Chae-Won listens from her room, her face flushing with deep embarrassment as she hears the conversation between her mother and Yuchan, unable to bring herself to intervene or explain further. After a moment, Yuchan returns to the tutoring room, relieved to see that Chae-Won has finally calmed down and is ready to continue her studies. Once she finishes her test, she hands it over to him, and he carefully reads through her answers, feeling a growing sense of admiration for how well she has grasped the key points of each question. Her understanding is clear and precise, showing a level of thoughtfulness and comprehension that impresses him deeply. Despite this academic success, Chae-Won's curiosity about the earlier awkward incident lingers in her expression, prompting him to quickly steer the conversation away from it. He praises her effort and suggests that they go over her answers with the mark scheme, focusing on the lesson rather than the chaos from before. Determined to rid his mind of all distracting and unwanted thoughts, Yuchan resumes tutoring her, trying his best to act as if nothing unusual happened and to treat her just like a normal student. However, Concentration proves difficult, as his mind keeps wandering back to the earlier incident. He struggles to maintain a neutral demeanor, even attempting to explain to her that she should not misinterpret his distraction, but she only responds with a mischievous smirk. Her playful expression seems to suggest that they are now accomplices in a secret, awkward understanding, as she subtly teases him for the situation that unfolded when she had taken off her clothes without her mother's knowledge. At that exact moment, Chae-Won's mother knocks gently on the door, causing both Yu-chan and Chae-Won to startle in surprise. Chae-Won immediately jumps from her seat, scrambling to put on her clothes as her mother enters the room. She brings a warm smile and a kind gesture, explaining that since Yu-chan has been working so hard to help her daughter, she wants to offer him something to support his health. She presents a set of ginseng drinks, encouraging him to take some. Yu-chan feels a mix of gratitude and humility, appreciating the kindness and realizing that Chae-Won's mother accepts him despite any feelings of inadequacy he might have. She remarks lightly that he is too humble, but assures him that since he comes highly recommended by Mr. Han, she trusts him completely. She also notes that her daughter still has a long way to go in her studies, expressing her hope that Yu-chan can continue to guide her with care and diligence. Shortly after, Chae-Won emerges from her room, attempting to regain composure after the earlier chaos. She approaches Yu-chan, introduces herself politely, and offers a sincere apology for screaming and causing a scene. She extends her hand to shake his, a gesture of reconciliation, which Yu-chan accepts with a nod. Chae-Won, however, watches their handshake with a sharp glare, clearly unimpressed by the moment. Meanwhile, their mother shakes her head and scolds Chae-Won for embarrassing the family, offering another apology to Yu-chan for the confusion before he finally takes his leave. Later, sitting at the train station, Yu-chan pulls out his phone and calls Ming-yu. Ming-yu answers with his usual casual tone, asking how the tutoring session went. Yu-chan responds that it went relatively normally, though he knows in his heart that it was a total train wreck, filled with awkward moments and unexpected interruptions. He then inquires about Chae-Won, noting how different she seems compared to her older sister. Ming-yu laughs lightly and explains that Chae-Won is extremely plain and quiet, fully focused on her studies and rarely distracted by anything else. Yu-chan thanks him for the insight and promises to buy him a drink next time. Ming-yu teases him, jokingly claiming that Yu-chan owes him a bottle of Dom Perignon, to which Yu-chan immediately retorts with a firm refusal, laughing despite himself. After ending the call, Yu-chan leans back in his seat and sighs deeply, letting the weight of the day settle on his shoulders. He stares off at the passing crowd and wonders quietly if he will truly be able to handle the responsibility of tutoring Chae-Won, unsure whether he can cope. The next day, Yu-chan arrives at Chae-Won's home, standing at the front door with a sense of determination, ringing the doorbell while telling himself that he is ready for anything this time and that he will do his absolute best. When Chae-Won's mother opens the door, he greets her politely and acknowledges that the previous tutoring session had not gone as smoothly as he had hoped. He admits that he was still new to the role and unprepared for some situations, but reassures her that he plans to handle things much better from now on. Chae-Won's mother smiles gently and tells him that he need not apologize, implying that her daughter might have been a bit difficult, but it is all part of learning. In a gesture of goodwill and transparency, Yu-chan hands over his Hobbit test results, hoping to ease any lingering concerns about his abilities and professionalism. She glances over the results and comments approvingly that he seems as reliable as he is disciplined, noting his fitness and strict self-care routine. Yu-chan modestly admits that he enjoys exercising in his spare time, seeing it as a way to maintain both physical and mental balance. Before they begin, Chae-Won appears from inside and snaps that they should hurry, reminding him that there is a lot she needs to learn. Yu-chan nods in agreement, understanding her seriousness and determination. Chae-Won's mother then suggests bringing some snacks for them while they study, but Yu-chan quickly points out that the snacks last time were too heavy on carbohydrates. He recommends lighter options like bananas or nuts instead, explaining that they provide a better balance of protein and energy for sustained focus. Once they settle into the study session, Yu-chan lays out the material he has prepared, explaining that he has tailored it based on her previous answer sheet so that they can focus specifically on the areas where she struggles the most. Chae-Won responds matter-of-factly that before starting, she needs to take off some of her clothes to feel comfortable. Yu-chan agrees, telling her that she should do whatever helps her concentrate, though he notices her glancing at him repeatedly in a way that makes him uneasy. Unable to ignore it, he cautiously asks if something is wrong. Chae-Won explains that under her dress, she is only wearing her underwear and asks if he intends to watch. Yu-chan immediately and firmly reassures her that he will not. promising to close his eyes to respect her privacy. A mischievous smirk spreads across her face as she teases that if he is truly ready to face the consequences, he can choose to watch. Yu-chan, recalling the mistakes and distractions from their previous session, obediently closes his eyes, reminding himself that he is prepared not to be pushed around this time. Yet, despite his careful planning and resolve, he soon realizes that from the very start, maintaining control over the situation is going to be far more difficult than he anticipated. The sound of Chae-Won quietly removing her clothes echoes faintly in the room, and despite his best efforts to focus elsewhere, Yu-chan's mind betrays him, filling in the rest with images he cannot control. He tries desperately to push his thoughts away, but they refuse to leave, forcing him to mutter under his breath that she cannot do this, reminding himself that she is a student and he is her teacher. The words hang awkwardly in the air, and Chae-Won glances at him with a mix of amusement and impatience, asking what he is suddenly saying. She quickly assures him that she is finished changing and insists that they should start the lesson. Yu-chan freezes, stunned, wondering if he misheard her, and questioning whether his imagination has created a delusion from the sounds he heard. Chae-Won, noticing his hesitation, teases lightly, asking if he had dozed off after closing his eyes. Yu-chan immediately denies it, insisting that he remained fully awake. She shrugs and tells him it is fine, assuring him that she would never tell her mother over something so trivial, but he still firmly insists that he did not doze off. Turning to the study material, she asks if this is the problem she should solve first, and Yu-chan acknowledges it, though he finds himself distracted by how quietly and efficiently she manages to dress. He wonders in amazement how someone can move so silently, his mind lingering on the feet, even as he reminds himself to focus on her as a student. The room falls into a strange, tense quiet, a noisy silence filled with the rhythm of their breathing. He can hear each inhale and exhale clearly, each tiny movement amplified in the stillness, and it overwhelms him in its intensity. As he glances at her, he tells himself repeatedly that he must see her only as a student, suppressing any thoughts of her as a young woman. Yet the moment of self-control falters when he realizes he has been caught staring. Chae-Won smirks, her tone teasing as she points out that his reaction is making it impossible for them to continue the lesson properly. She suggests that he should do something about it, leaving him to wonder silently what exactly she means by that. Yu-chan reacts to Chae-Won's earlier remark and seeks clarity. Chae-Won repeats her meaning without hesitation, and the weight of her words hits him hard. He reminds her that students shouldn't act that way, but she brushes it off with a playful smirk, insisting she is an adult who knows more than he assumes. Her teasing expression makes it clear that she is messing with him, and Yu-chan tries to steady himself before things escalate. He quickly pulls out his phone, plays the national anthem, and puts on his earpods. The solemn melody drags him back into harsh memories of military training, sweat, drills, and exhaustion. Even the struggles of his 20s rush back to him. Gradually, the memories ground him. He calms down, apologizes for losing composure, and suggests they focus on studying again. Chae-Won, however, seems unimpressed. She finds him unbearably dull and complains that he gives her no room to breathe. Yu-chan ignores the remark and directs her attention back to the workbook. She resumes her work, but soon interrupts him again. When he looks up, she casually announces that she has a request. She wants to touch his muscles. The request catches Yu-chan completely off guard. Chae-Won remains unfazed, claiming fairness. She was flustered earlier, so now it's his turn. He wonders what she is thinking, especially since he only just regained control. She shows no hint of emotion, maintaining a perfect poker face. Then she reaches out and lightly touches his biceps, amused by how firm they feel. She shifts her attention to his chest, pressing her fingers against his pecs with a curious look, noting their solidity as well. Yu-chan feels his composure slipping again. He quickly pulls away and tells her to stop, but Chae-Won refuses to let him go. She grabs his hand, holding him in place with surprising confidence. She warns him not to resist and moves behind him. Her tone turns lower as she reminds him that they are supposed to be partners, and if he keeps acting stiff, he will be left dealing with the consequences alone. She insists she only wants a little more time to touch him. Chae-Won's hands press against Yu-chan's chest again, her fingers lingering as if testing how far she can push him. Yu-chan tries to stay composed, fully aware that he needs to end this before the situation gets completely out of control. He insists that she has done enough and that he needs to keep himself together. Chae-Won still doesn't step back. She calmly points out that if he hasn't figured out her intentions by now, then he is far more clueless than she thought. Before he can process her words, she wraps her arms around him from the front, holding him close. She leans in, noting the way he smells, her voice low and soft. The warmth of her body against his sends a sharp shock through him, making him realize that her actions are no longer simple teasing. The atmosphere changes instantly, only to be interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Chae-Won's mother calls out from the other side, mentioning that she has brought some fruit and wants to come in. Both Yu-chan and Chae-Won freeze where they are, their faces showing identical shock. Chae-Won's mom walks into the room carrying a plate of sliced bananas. She explains that she bought them for Yu-chan, just as he requested, though she may have bought far more than needed. She encourages him to enjoy them during the lesson. As she looks around, her expression changes when she notices Chae-Won standing behind Yu-chan. She immediately questions why her daughter is positioned there. Yu-chan feels the tension rising and realizes he has only seconds before things become suspicious. Acting on instinct, he hurriedly claims that he had Chae-Won exercising. The explanation only confuses her mother further. It makes little sense for exercise to happen during a composition lesson. Realizing this, Yu-chan adds more detail and insists that Chae-Won was doing squats. Picking up the cue instantly, Chae-Won begins doing real squats on the spot. To strengthen the act, Yu-chan confidently explains that a study from Cambridge claims exercise activates more neurons and boosts academic performance. He says he has seen the benefits himself, turning the excuse into a believable method. Chae-Won's mom listens and slowly accepts it, then notices something else. Chae-Won must have changed her outfit because her earlier clothes weren't suitable for exercise. Yu-chan agrees immediately, keeping the story intact. Believing that Yu-chan is putting extraordinary effort into her daughter's learning, Chae-Won's mom thanks him sincerely before leaving the room. Once the door closes, Chae-Won drops the act, groaning that her legs ache. Yu-chan, still overwhelmed by how chaotic the situation became, wonders what she was thinking by jumping in so quickly. He pushes the thought aside and directs her back to the lesson. Later, Chae-Won comes looking for Yu-chan. She mentions that she didn't see him and wonders if Chae-Won had her private lesson today. Chae-Won casually tells her that the lesson is already over. Chae-Won is surprised, thinking Yu-chan should still be there. Chae-Won remains nonchalant, claiming the lesson started and ended at 3. Slowly, Chae-Won realizes she has been tricked. Chae-Won smirks, admitting it was a lie, and teasingly suggests that Chae-Won may have been hoping to see Yu-chan. She adds a playful jab about Chae-Won's intentions, which immediately angers her older sister. Before the argument escalates, their mother intervenes, scolding both and sending Chae-Won back to her room to study. As Chae-Won walks away, Chae-Won warns her that she cannot keep Yu-chan all to herself and vows to see him next time. On the day of the next lesson, Chae-Won's plan falls apart. She learns she cannot stay home because she has a hospital visit scheduled to receive the cervical cancer vaccine. She protests, but her mother insists that the appointment cannot be delayed. Chae-Won reluctantly goes along. At the house, Chae-Won is the only one home when Yu-chan arrives. She greets him at the door and explains that her mother and sister are at the hospital, leaving her alone for today. As they enter her room, Yu-chan prepares to start the lesson, but Chae-Won interrupts. She emphasizes that maintaining physical condition is important, even for him. Then she brings up the previous lesson, revealing that she hasn't been able to sleep properly since then. The memory of touching him lingers in her mind, refusing to fade, and she insists that the only way to move past it is to do it properly this time. Before Yu-chan can fully process her words, Chae-Won begins unbuttoning her clothes, her expression calm and determined. She insists that he should help her feel better and sleep properly, pointing out that it would be unfair if only he exposed himself, so she intends to do the same. Panic immediately sets in for Yu-chan. He tries to stop her, explaining that such actions are inappropriate and should only happen when she has a boyfriend. Chae-Won refuses to accept this, her gaze sharp and unwavering. She questions whether his resistance is just an attempt to make her fail her second KSAT attempt. The pressure intensifies as she reminds him that no one else is home, leaving him trapped in the situation. As Yu-chan gets ready to leave, he reminds Chae-Won to complete the mock tests he assigned. She confidently assures him that she is diligent and there is no need to worry about her studying. Yu-chan heads home and collapses onto his bed, his mind racing with everything that happened. The reality of the day weighs heavily on him, pressing down on his chest with undeniable force. While he tries to organize his thoughts, his smartwatch vibrates. Glancing at it, he realizes he has completed nearly 30 minutes of intense exercise, and he pauses, surprised that it even counts as a workout. Before he can process further, his phone buzzes with an incoming message from Chae-Won. The message is short and direct. She informs him not to come for the next class. Shock immediately floods him. His grip on the phone tightens, and his heart races as he wonders if he has made a serious mistake. Yuchan sits in his room, staring at his phone, unable to process Chae-Won's sudden message. The mood had been fine when he left, so her cancellation shocks him. His chest tightens as a terrible thought enters his mind. What if her family found out? His imagination spirals into worst-case scenarios. He envisions himself on the news, his face across the screen under the headline of a sexual assault case. He sees himself arrested, handcuffed, and interrogated, with his life unraveling instantly. Needing to clear his head, Yuchan heads to the gym. The past few days at home have only increased his sense of doom, and the silence feels unbearable. Chae-Won ignores his calls and messages, leaving him to overthink. Exercise seems like the only way to cope while maintaining his fitness. As he works out, Ha Min-jung, a blonde woman in her early 30s and gym manager, approaches. She observes him for a moment and remarks that he might be overdoing it. Yuchan explains that he has been using the gym due to his situation, and she shrugs, saying she doesn't mind and is there to work out herself. After finishing, Yuchan wipes the sweat from his forehead and prepares to leave. Min-jung reminds him to let her know if he needs the gym again. Later, in the shower, Yuchan notices several missed calls and messages from Chae-Won's mother, but none from Chae-Won. His stomach churns at the thought, and he calls back. The next day, Yuchan arrives at Chae-Won's house. Her mother apologizes and explains that someone in the hospital they visited tested positive for an illness, causing schedule disruptions and delayed contact. Relief washes over Yuchan as he realizes nothing worse has happened. Frustration lingers over Chae-Won's vague message, which causes him days of stress. Entering Chae-Won's room, he notes that the testing must have been exhausting. Her calm, nonchalant attitude annoys him. The tension he's held over the past few days surfaces, and he reminds her sharply of what they did, unable to contain his emotions any longer. Chae-Won assures Yuchan that nothing is wrong with her and that she would have contacted him if there were. Yuchan waits for an explanation about why she ignored his messages, but she remains silent. Deciding it's not worth arguing, he lets it go and shifts his attention to her studies. He notes that her progress is behind schedule and focuses on catching up. As he begins teaching, Yuchan feels off. His mind drifts, and he struggles to concentrate on his explanations. His usual focus falters, and no matter how hard he tries, he finds it increasingly difficult to stay on track. As Yuchan finishes the lesson, Chae-Won suddenly enters Chae-Won's room. She notices the slightly tense atmosphere and jokingly teases Yuchan about something with her sister. He stiffens and denies it, though his nervous reaction betrays him. Chae-Won laughs, shifting the topic to his physique, mentioning how fit he looks and hinting that she wants to work out because she feels she has gained weight. Yuchan quickly redirects the conversation, reminding her that he is only a composition tutor and preparing to leave. Chae-Won presses him to help her exercise since it is still early in the afternoon, but he insists he has plans and leaves, reminding Chae-Won to finish her homework. He senses that Chae-Won is still slightly upset from their earlier exchange. Later at the gym, Yuchan receives a message from Chae-Won's mother. She explains that Chae-Won wants personal training sessions and offers good pay. Yuchan hesitates, feeling uneasy about getting involved with Chae-Won, and replies that he cannot confirm yet, unsure if he will have the time. Yuchan tries to push his thoughts aside and starts his workout, but his distracted mind leads to an accident. Mid-exercise, he loses control of his kettlebell, which crashes into the gym's glass. The shattering sound draws Min-jung over. Yuchan apologizes and offers to take full responsibility, but Min-jung reassures him that accidents happen often. Despite her words, guilt lingers, and he reflects on the kindness of the gym owner and the chat with Chae-Won's mother about Chae-Won's personal training request. Later, Yuchan arrives at Chae-Won's house, greeted by Chae-Won in sportswear. With Chae-Won and their mother out, she introduces herself as his student. Yuchan, focused on efficiency, immediately starts the training session without reacting to her outfit. Leading him to the exercise area, Chae-Won reveals a fully equipped home gym. Yuchan is momentarily absorbed by the high-end equipment and mirrors. Amused, Chae-Won notices his focus on the gym, rather than her. Yuchan mutters about the lifestyle of the wealthy. Chae-Won calls herself more of a trainee than a student, and playfully addresses him as Trainer Yuchan. The title awakens a dormant part of his ego. He straightens, changes into his gym clothes, and commits to taking his role seriously. He states the need to check her current physical condition. Chae-Won, understanding his intent, begins to adjust her clothing, prompting an immediate sharp reaction from Yuchan. Yuchan immediately stops Chae-Won, alarmed at her stripping and worried about potential consequences if her mother walks in. He insists she keep her clothes on, reasoning that what he sees is already sufficient for assessment. Chae-Won casually explains that she thought taking off clothes was normal for fitness assessments, citing social media examples. Yuchan sighs and directs her to stay as she is and spin around. He notes her muscular build and moderately developed core. Chae-Won asks about an exercise plan, and Yuchan keeps it simple since it's her first day. Soon, Chae-Won collapses on the floor, exhausted. Yuchan remarks that she's overreacting and encourages her to complete one more set, remaining unconvinced by her complaints. Meanwhile, Chae-Won and their mother return home, overhearing Yuchan's firm instructions as he pushes Chae-Won through her workout. Their mother casually plans for Yuchan to resume Chae-Won's lesson afterward. Later, Yuchan enters Chae-Won's room in casual clothes and apologizes for his appearance. Chae-Won barely reacts, directing him to sit and pointing out that he is slightly late. They review test questions, and Yuchan feels unusually sharp and motivated, likely energized by the earlier training session. He checks her understanding, and she quickly engages with the material, showing newfound motivation. He gives her 20 minutes to work on the problem. As Yuchan heads home that evening, he feels unusually lighthearted. The day went well, and the PT session boosted his mood more than expected. For the first time in a while, he looks forward to the next lesson. On the following PT and lesson day, Yuchan checks on the sister's condition. Chae-Won complains immediately, dressed modestly since their mother is in the living room. Unexpectedly, Chae-Won expresses interest in exercising as well. Yuchan adjusts their routines accordingly, keeping the intensity moderate. During the session, Chae-Won quickly grows exhausted and tries to escape, but Yuchan calls out her exaggeration. Chae-Won collapses on the floor, barely moving. Chae-Won becomes desperate, begging for the session to end. Afterward, Yuchan sits in the living room while the sisters shower. Their mother offers snacks and thanks him for energizing her daughters, assuring him he only needs to ask if he ever needs anything. Yuchan politely declines, though guilt lingers. Back in Chae-Won's room, she slumps into her chair, complaining about how rough the session was given she still has a composition lesson. Yuchan immediately apologizes and asks if the exercise at least made her feel refreshed. She turns the question back on him, prompting him to realize that he might have pushed her too hard, especially since she seemed competitive with Chae-Won. Chae-Won complains about sore legs, stiff back, and shoulders, and requests that Yuchan give her a massage to take responsibility. After a brief hesitation, Yuchan agrees, reassuring himself that her mother isn't nearby, and Chae-Won is too exhausted to interrupt. He prepares to start the massage. Yuchan is still massaging Chae-Won, and during the calm moment, Chae-Won gently hints that she wants them to enjoy some quiet, private time together without her mother or sister noticing. Yuchan agrees without hesitation, wanting to keep things simple, and he reminds her to stay quiet so no one nearby becomes aware of them. As time goes on, Chae-Won struggles to keep her voice low because of how relaxed and overwhelmed she feels, so she signals to Yuchan to help her stay silent, so their moment remains unnoticed by anyone around them. Yuchan always makes sure to cover Chae-Won's mouth gently whenever she is about to raise her voice, and because of this quiet understanding between them, they continue spending their private time together without anyone else noticing. Meanwhile, at that time, Chae-Won feels as if her whole body is giving up on her, because every muscle still hurts from the intense exercise she had earlier. Even with the pain spreading through her arms and legs, she still holds on to one thought strongly in her mind. She wants to see Yuchan before he leaves. She believes that if she meets him alone, the small plan forming in her thoughts will fall into place. She already notices how much Chae-Won likes Yuchan, and this makes her feel that taking Yuchan's attention away from her sister would be the perfect way to get revenge. As she lies down, she keeps thinking about all the jealousy building between her and Chae-Won, remembering how much she dislikes the way Yuchan behaves differently with them. She hates how Yuchan always becomes strict and focused when training her, yet becomes gentle and calm when dealing with her sister. These thoughts keep stirring inside her, feeding her irritation and envy. Just then, Chae-Won begins to hear faint sounds coming from Chae-Won's room. The noises catch her attention immediately, and her curiosity rises. She slowly gets up even though her body aches and walks toward the door. When she reaches the doorway, she tries to turn the handle to open it, but she freezes in surprise when she realizes that the door is locked, something that almost never happens. Chae-Won wonders why Chae-Won would lock the door again, because it is something she almost never does, and the sudden action makes her even more curious about what is happening inside the room. At this point, she knocks on the door and asks for it to be opened, explaining that she heard some noise, which made her come to check on them. Before Chae-Won goes to open the door, she quickly fixes herself and adjusts her appearance so she looks completely normal, as if nothing unusual has happened. However, she is visibly irritated by the interruption her sister has caused, and this annoyance shows clearly on her face. Chae-Won immediately notices Chae-Won's expression and questions why her sister looks so displeased. Chae-Won responds by saying that her irritation comes from the fact that her sister is causing a disturbance. Chae-Won finds the reply unnecessarily harsh and insulting, yet she tries to explain herself calmly. She says she only came to check because she heard noises and thought something might be wrong, and she had no idea she would receive such an unfriendly reaction from Chae-Won. Even after the explanation, Chae-Won insists that her sister should not worry about her at all because she believes that Chae-Won rarely shows concern for her anyway. Instead, she takes Chae-Won's visit as an interruption to her studies. With growing suspicion, Chae-Won even asks if Chae-Won is suddenly acting so concerned because Yu-chan happens to be present at the moment. Throughout the entire exchange, Yu-chan silently remains relieved that Chae-Won did not discover anything suspicious earlier. He has already cleaned the room as quickly as possible to remove any signs that might raise questions, and he keeps hoping the argument between the sisters ends soon before Chae-Won notices something unusual that could expose their secret. Eventually, Chae-Won begins to say that she smells something strange in the room, and upon hearing this, Yu-chan immediately steps between them. He explains calmly that he gave Chae-Won a massage because she had been in a lot of pain earlier, and that the noise Chae-Won heard must have come from that. He apologizes sincerely, hoping to settle the tension and bring peace back into the room. When Chae-Won hears this, she becomes cheerful again, realizing that Yu-chan has skill in giving massages. She excitedly asks if he can give her a massage next time she is sore after training, and when Yu-chan agrees, she becomes even happier and thanks him warmly. Later that night, Chae-Won lies in her bed watching a cat video on her phone, using the cute distraction to comfort herself from the lingering aches in her body. Her classmate suddenly sends her a link for an online lecture, but deep down, she has no desire to watch it at all. She continues focusing on the cat videos, hoping they help her feel better emotionally and physically. She reflects on how strange it is that this becomes her freshman college life, staying in a room, attending online classes, and trying to cope with stress through videos. And she realizes that the situation brought by COVID is the reason she is experiencing such a quiet and isolated beginning to her college journey. Chae-Won often thinks about the college life she once imagined for herself, a life filled with excitement, freedom, and endless possibilities. She dreams of a campus where she can move around freely, meet new people, make meaningful friendships, build connections, find a partner, and enjoy every corner of the school with energy and confidence. But the reality she faces now is nothing like the picture she created in her mind. She cannot go outside as she wishes, she cannot explore the campus, and she spends most of her days confined to a room, forced to attend online lectures that she dislikes with all her heart. The change feels like a heavy disappointment, and she often wonders how everything became so different from what she hoped for. Because she cannot go out to meet new people like she expected, she tells herself that having Yu-chan close is more important than ever. Her isolation makes her cling to the idea of keeping him to herself, thinking that at least one part of her college experience can still turn out the way she wants. While Yu-chan is at home, he receives a message from Chae-Won. She tells him not to come for the next lesson. Curious about the sudden change, he asks for the reason, and she explains that she needs to move his lesson date because she has a special class at her academy. She asks if he can come a day earlier instead, and Yu-chan agrees without hesitation, adjusting his schedule to match hers. On the newly agreed day, Yu-chan arrives at Chae-Won's house for the lesson. However, Chae-Won is completely unaware of the change in plans. With no mental preparation and no time to adjust her routine, the exercises feel far more painful and exhausting for her. She complains in frustration, saying that Chae-Won should have informed her earlier about the change of date, because the sudden switch makes everything harder for her to endure. As Chae-Won continues her exercises, Yu-chan tries to focus on supervising her training, but his attention begins to drift. Her movements, her posture, and the effort she puts into each routine momentarily distract him, and he finds himself losing concentration. It is not until Chae-Won calls out his name with irritation in her voice that he snaps back to reality and regains his focus. When he finally responds, Chae-Won, still sore from her training, tells him that she wants a massage too, believing that it will help ease her pain after the difficult session she has just endured. Yu-chan asks Chae-Won if she is really in pain since she suddenly requests a massage, and Chae-Won immediately says that she is. She also reminds him of the promise he made earlier when he told her he would help her the next time she was sore after training. Hearing this, Yuchan realizes he has no choice but to keep his word, especially since she looks tired and stiff from the difficult exercises. Even so, he becomes worried. His mind starts to imagine the possible trouble he could face if Chae-Won's mother walks by and sees him massaging her daughter in the living room. He knows that no amount of explanation would make the situation look normal, and the thought alone makes him uneasy. He hesitates, thinking carefully about what to do. Chae-Won notices that Yuchan is still standing still and not starting anything yet, so she asks him what the problem is. Yuchan responds that the living room floor is too hard for her to lie on, and that it would be better if they move to her room instead, where she can be more comfortable. Chae-Won agrees immediately, without any hesitation. She leads him into her room, and as soon as Yuchan steps inside, he senses a completely different atmosphere compared to Chae-Won's room. Even though the two are sisters, the rooms reflect different personalities. He notices that Chae-Won has a double-decker bed, even though she sleeps alone. She explains that it is the same bed she shared with Chae-Won when they were younger, and because of that memory, it remains her favorite bed. She says she cannot fall asleep comfortably unless she sleeps on it. Not long after, they begin the massage, and as Yuchan works carefully, he can immediately feel how strong and tense Chae-Won's body is. Her muscles carry a different type of energy, powerful, athletic, and filled with the results of her intense training. Yuchan focuses on helping her relax, doing his best to remain professional. However, while the massage continues, a sudden knock comes from the door, and both of them hear Chae-Won's voice calling from outside. Without thinking, Yuchan pulls away from Chae-Won and quickly says he needs to step into the bathroom. He does not want Chae-Won to misunderstand anything, and he feels that leaving the room immediately is the safest choice. The moment he hides in the bathroom, Chae-Won opens the door since Chae-Won did not lock it. Chae-Won enters with the intention of telling Yuchan that it is almost time for her lesson, but she becomes shocked when she sees that her teacher is nowhere in sight and her sister is the one inside the room instead. Confusion spreads through her expression as she asks Chae-Won what Yuchan was doing there. But instead of answering directly, Chae-Won becomes defensive. She asks her sister why she is acting like Yuchan belongs only to her and why it is strange for him to be in someone else's room. Her tone shows irritation, as if she feels accused of something she did not do. Just then, Yuchan steps out of the bathroom and apologizes to Chae-Won for keeping her waiting. He gently asks her to go back to her room so they can begin her lesson. Chae-Won agrees, but still carries suspicion in her eyes. When they return to her room, Chae-Won asks again what Yuchan was really doing in Chae-Won's room. Yuchan explains that he was simply giving her a massage after her training session because she was sore. He tries to speak calmly so the matter does not grow into something unnecessary. Wanting to avoid any more uncomfortable questions, he encourages Chae-Won to start the lesson quickly. However, Chae-Won insists on confirming that he did not do anything unusual or inappropriate with her sister. Her words frustrate Yuchan because he feels misunderstood and unfairly judged. His face shows clear irritation as he wonders why Chae-Won sees him in such a suspicious light. Chae-Won, however, becomes even more convinced when she notices that his face looks flushed. She points out that he seems embarrassed and even slightly blushing. Yuchan knows that Chae-Won is right, but he cannot tell her the real reason, so he decides to lie. He says that he is only blushing because he feels happy to see her a day earlier than usual. Chae-Won can tell that it is not true, but Yuchan keeps insisting that it is. In the end, the lie only makes Chae-Won more curious. She wants to know what seeing her has to do with him blushing. She becomes even more interested in finding out what he is thinking about that makes his face turn red. Yuchan feels shocked, not expecting her to take things that far. Chae-Won wants to know what he is imagining and makes it clear that she will not focus on the lesson until he tells her. She asks him to whisper it so her sister cannot hear, sensing that her sister might be eavesdropping. Meanwhile, Chae-Won feels an itch in her inner ear, unaware that her name is being mentioned in the next room. Yuchan reluctantly follows Chae-Won's request, even though he does not understand why. He whispers a small lie, saying he imagined them sharing another pleasant moment together. Chae-Won struggles to control herself, but eventually Yuchan cannot maintain the lie and acts on his imagination in reality. At that time, Chae-Won goes to their door, trying to eavesdrop, but she cannot hear anything. Then she remembers that Chae-Won's room is soundproofed by their mother because she is preparing for the CSAT. Chae-Won feels frustrated, thinking she had Yuchan to herself. But Chae-Won ruined everything. She decides to try another method. Meanwhile, Chae-Won and Yuchan are inside, enjoying themselves to the fullest. After some time, Chae-Won's mother knocks on the door to inform them that she and Chae-Won are heading to the market, so Yuchan and Chae-Won can continue their lesson. Chae-Won protests, saying she does not want to go, but her mother warns her to behave like a good child to avoid embarrassment in front of Yuchan. Eventually, Chae-Won's mother drags Chae-Won along so she does not disturb Chae-Won during her lesson, and they leave. With the house now empty except for them, Chae-Won and Yuchan feel happy. Chae-Won suggests moving to the living room to continue their fun. Yuchan feels scared about leaving Chae-Won's room, worried that her mother and Chae-Won might return early and it will be hard to get back to her room quickly. Chae-Won, however, insists that her mother will take at least 2 hours to buy groceries, reassuring Yuchan that they will be fine. Still, Yuchan hesitates, uneasy about the location, but seeing Chae-Won's insistence, he decides to follow her request. They continue. Yuchan and Chae-Won spend so much time enjoying themselves that they cover up the lesson for that day. Yuchan tells her that they can finish it online and gives her some homework, which Chae-Won promises to complete diligently. By the time Chae-Won and their mother return from the market, Yuchan and Chae-Won are already back in Chae-Won's room, feeling relieved that no one will interrupt them. As their mother prepares a meal in the kitchen, Chae-Won sits watching the news. Their mother complains that the volume is too loud and asks her to reduce it so it will not distract her in her room. Chae-Won, however, finds this annoying and wonders why their mother always seems to side with Chae-Won. She remembers that she usually switches to news because her mother told her not to watch entertainment shows, but now even watching the news brings complaints. Angry and frustrated, Chae-Won decides to switch back to entertainment without caring about her mother's warnings, knowing that Chae-Won cannot hear what she is watching from her room. Despite this, Chae-Won begins to notice strange feelings building inside her, thoughts of Yuchan occupying her mind. She struggles to control herself, remembering how much she likes him and that she tends to become the submissive one in their relationship. However, things do not go as her heart desires, and she wonders why that is happening. After some reflection, she concludes that it is all Yuchan's fault for having such an attractive body, which makes her fall for him even more. While Chae-Won is lost in this thought, Chae-Won catches her in the act. Curious, Chae-Won decides to confront her, wanting to know what kind of strange imagination could make her sister blush so easily. Chae-Won becomes angry at the accusation, but Chae-Won calmly tells her that no matter what delights her, she will not win, suspecting that her thoughts might be about Yuchan. Chae-Won, however, understands that she will need to put in extra effort if she wants to have Yuchan for herself. A week later, on the main street of Guangtan City, Chae-Won waits for Yuchan, expecting him to arrive soon. She becomes slightly worried when he is not there yet, hoping he will not disappoint her. Just as her concern grows, she hears her name called from behind. She turns to see Yuchan, panting as if he has rushed all the way, apologizing for being late because he got a little lost. Chae-Won reassures him not to worry and asks him to follow her, which he does, still marveling at how close he has become to her. A few days before Chae-Won and Yuchan meet, Yuchan spends his time working on Chae-Won's composition writing test answers. Although Chae-Won urgently needs them, he realizes that finishing everything in one night may not be possible. Deep down, he knows it is entirely his fault because he had spent the time he was supposed to teach her playing around instead, and now the consequences of his actions are catching up with him. That night, Chae-Won messages him to ask when she can receive the answers, explaining that her mock exam is scheduled for the following week. Yuchan reassures her that he will send her the feedback as soon as he finishes the work, trying to calm her urgency without overpromising. After finishing the conversation with Chae-Won, Yuchan puts down his phone, only to hear a notification beep from Chae-Won's message. Surprised, he checks it and finds that she has sent him a photo of herself, asking if he thinks she has lost weight. Yuchan feels a mix of confusion and curiosity, wondering why Chae-Won is reaching out to him so proactively, especially when Chae-Won has shown signs of jealousy before. He hesitates, unsure if these gestures are meant to show that Chae-Won likes him as a man, or if she is simply being casual and natural in her approach. After careful thought, Yuchan decides to respond cautiously, reminding Chae-Won to refrain from sending personal messages and gently emphasizing that their relationship is strictly one of trainer and trainee. Just as he sends the message, his previous boss from the gym unexpectedly messages him, inquiring about how he has been and asking if he plans to return to their gym. Yuchan feels shocked by the sudden contact, questioning why she would reach out to him again after such a long time. He replies politely, explaining that he is currently busy, but will contact her if he plans to visit. Later, Yuchan receives a call from his friend Mingyu, and they spend time talking about Yuchan's work. Mingyu has already heard about the gym training sessions Yuchan is giving Chae-Won, and he wonders if Yuchan is doing it to get Chae-Won's attention. He also knows that Yuchan already has a connection with Chae-Won, which makes him question why Yuchan is still training Chae-Won. Yu-chan explains patiently that it is not as Mingyu thinks, and that his only intention is to earn money, not to pursue Chae-Won romantically. The next day, Chae-Won calls Yu-chan to ask if he can come to the fitness center in Guangtan for a gym session. Yu-chan is initially shocked that she would choose that gym over any other, but Chae-Won clarifies that she has already obtained her father's permission to use the gym before it opens for business. Yu-chan reminds her that the gym she chose is actually the most luxurious premium fitness center in the country, but Chae-Won confidently says that she knew that before she made her choice. Accepting her determination, Yu-chan agrees, and together they fix a date to meet and head to the fitness center. Upon arriving, Chae-Won ushers Yu-chan inside and informs him that they are permitted to use the facility until 4 in the afternoon. Yu-chan cannot stop imagining the opportunity to use all the new equipment before the gym officially opens to the public, feeling a mix of excitement and anticipation. Once inside, Yu-chan is immediately wowed by the state-of-the-art equipment, and he requests some private time to explore and use the machines that interest him most. Chae-Won agrees willingly, happy to see that Yu-chan is enjoying the gym far more than she had expected. Time passes quickly, and before Yu-chan realizes it, 2 hours have gone by. Chae-Won enters to inform him that their permitted time is up, feeling a little in pain from the wait. Yu-chan is surprised and feels genuinely sorry, as he had only intended to spend 30 minutes in the gym and had completely lost track of time. He apologizes sincerely and promises that he will make time later to give Chae-Won a proper training session. Taking advantage of the situation, Chae-Won playfully asks Yu-chan for a date to prove that he is truly sorry. At first, Yu-chan hesitates and wants to decline, but her insistence eventually convinces him to agree. Afterward, he goes to take a bath while Chae-Won changes into a different dress and adds accessories, completely transforming her appearance. When Yu-chan returns, he is surprised by the sudden change in her aura, noticing how different and radiant she looks compared to when she is at home. During their outing, Chae-Won notices the slight distance Yu-chan keeps from her and moves closer, grabbing his arm. She tells him that this is not the time for formalities or social distancing and encourages him to drop all pretenses and speak casually with her. Smiling, she suggests that they go eat some daeokbokki, admitting that she is hungry. Upon arriving at the restaurant, Yu-chan and Chae-Won are asked to scan their QR codes for entry. Chae-Won has already completed hers quickly, while Yu-chan fumbles through his phone, trying to locate the correct application. Noticing his struggle, Chae-Won teases him playfully, mocking his hesitation, but Yu-chan explains that he rarely goes out to eat and is unfamiliar with the process. After a few moments, he successfully scans the code, and their temperatures are checked. Once the staff confirms that both readings are normal, they are directed to their seats and informed that they must keep their masks on while ordering, only removing them once the food is served, and to ring the bell when ready to place an order. While waiting, Chae-Won attentively browses the menu and asks Yu-chan if he can handle spicy food. Yu-chan responds that he can manage food with average spiciness, but prefers to avoid extreme heat. As they discuss the menu, Yu-chan overhears a few men at a nearby table commenting on Chae-Won's appearance, clearly admiring her, but uncertain whether he is her boyfriend. Chae-Won, engrossed in the menu, does not notice their conversation, but Yu-chan feels a growing discomfort, glancing at them, out of curiosity and unease, knowing he cannot intervene. Soon after, their meal arrives and Chae-Won eagerly begins eating, unable to contain her excitement, as it has been a long time since she last enjoyed that particular dish. Yu-chan, however, remains tense and momentarily forgets to remove his nose mask before lifting the food to his mouth. Chae-Won notices and gently reminds him to take it off, prompting Yu-chan to remove the mask despite the visible daeokbokki stains on it, feeling slightly embarrassed. They enjoy their meal together, the atmosphere lightening as they share small moments in laughter. When it is time to pay, Chae-Won insists on handling the bill, which Yu-chan appreciates gratefully, feeling relieved and impressed by her generosity. Afterward, as Yu-chan attempts to put his mask back on, he feels a wave of embarrassment at the sight of the daeokbokki stains. Surprisingly, Chae-Won tells Yu-chan that she will buy him a new mask, knowing that they cannot go anywhere comfortably otherwise. Yu-chan feels genuinely grateful for her thoughtfulness as they leave the restaurant, but Chae-Won reminds him that they need to hurry because their date has only just begun. At that moment, Yu-chan realizes he must compose himself, steadying his nerves for the rest of the evening. They move on to another place to buy some toys, enjoying the simple pleasure of browsing together, and later head to a cozy cafe where they spend more time talking and relaxing. Before they know it, darkness falls. signaling the passage of hours. Chae-Won casually mentions that she often comes to that cafe alone, but she finds it enjoyable to be there with Yuchun that night. Trying to be playful, she jokes that if she were to have a child with Yuchun in the future, she would love to raise the child around that cafe. The comment catches Yuchun completely off guard, and the joke is so overwhelming that he accidentally spits out the drink he is having. He quickly cautions Chae-Won about making such jokes and rushes to the restroom to clean himself, while Chae-Won remains unfazed, finding nothing wrong with what she said. In reality, Yuchun uses the restroom partly to calm himself down. He reflects on Chae-Won's behavior, understanding it from his perspective. Being a freshman in college during a lockdown makes her anxious, and she has not yet had the chance to explore college life fully. This explains why she still acts in ways reminiscent of a high school student around him, her former teacher. When it is time to pay for their drinks, Yuchun insists on covering the bill this time, noticing how Chae-Won has paid for almost everything else during the day. Chae-Won gratefully agrees and thanks him for his thoughtfulness. However, in his nervousness, Yuchun mistakenly hands the attendant his resident registration card instead of his payment card, forcing him to apologize before providing the correct one. Chae-Won notices his small mistakes and wonders if he is simply nervous. Later, Yuchun decides to have a beer to calm his nerves and asks if Chae-Won would like to join him. She agrees, reminding him that she is already an adult. They leave the cafe together, and Yuchun initially plans to demonstrate how much alcohol he can drink without getting drunk. However, within an hour, he becomes surprisingly intoxicated. Recognizing his condition, Chae-Won supports him on the way to the bus stop, noting that it would be unsafe for him to take public transport in his current state. Yuchun silently wonders how she seems to know exactly what he needs, and Chae-Won casually reminds him that she is not a little girl anymore, subtly showing how much she has grown and how capable she is of handling the situation. Chae-Won leads Yuchun to a public bathroom, and together they find a quiet corner where they can stay temporarily. She encourages him to let her help him with what he needs so they can finish quickly and leave. But Yuchun feels anxious, worried that someone might catch them in the act since it is a public space. Chae-Won, however, reassures him calmly that he has nothing to fear and that they only need to be quick. Yuchun hesitates and insists that he can handle it alone. Yet Chae-Won argues that it would be much easier and faster if she assists him. After a prolonged discussion, Yuchun reluctantly agrees to let her help. Still, realizing that the location is not convenient for them, they decide together to move to a motel where they can spend time privately and comfortably, away from any interruptions, so they can finally enjoy being together. After they finish, Chae-Won begins preparing for them to leave, mindful of the last bus schedule so they do not miss it. Just as she is about to suggest they go, Yuchun pleads with her to spend a little more time together. Initially, Chae-Won refuses, worried about getting home too late. But Yuchun insists, gently yet persistently assuring her that he only wants to enjoy her company for a short while, and promises that they will still have enough time to catch the last bus. Reluctantly, Chae-Won agrees, trusting his words and allowing them to linger a little longer together. After some time, Yuchun finally releases Chae-Won, aware that the bus could arrive at the stop at any moment and that they need to leave soon. Just as they prepare to part ways, Chae-Won takes a deep breath and chooses this moment to ask him out, boldly requesting if he could simply be her boyfriend. At first, Yuchun is taken aback and assumes she is teasing him, but Chae-Won insists that she is serious, acknowledging to herself that it might be a bit inappropriate to confess at a place like that. She gazes at him earnestly and admits that she has liked him from the very moment she first saw him in their house, leaving Yuchun completely speechless. Yuchun cannot have imagined that, at the age of 30, someone would finally confess their feelings for him so openly. Still, he knows he must make a careful decision, feeling the weight of his position as a tutor. He wants to explain to Chae-Won that dating would be difficult because of their tutor-student relationship, and he worries about the consequences if her parents were to find out. Chae-Won, however, refuses to accept this excuse and challenges him, asking if he is declining her request because of her sister, Cheon. Yuchun is momentarily shocked that she would bring up Cheon, and he struggles to defend himself, insisting that it has nothing to do with her sister, even though he is unsure what to say next. Chae-Won, seeing his hesitation, calmly tells him that she already knows what he wants to say because she can read it on his face. She points out that he is trying to explain that their tutor-student relationship makes dating impossible. Despite the seriousness of the moment, Chae-Won asserts confidently that she will not let him evade her, playfully declaring that she will make sure he ends up begging her to be his girlfriend. With that, they part ways and head toward their respective homes, their hearts full of unspoken thoughts and new possibilities. When Chae-Won arrives home, her mother is surprised to see her so late at night, as she had previously told her mother that she would be spending the night at a friend's house. Chae-Won quickly explains that she missed her mother too much to stay away, and that is why she decided to return home after a night of fun. To cover the real reason for her early return, which was that her friend had started talking to her boyfriend over the phone, something that irritated Chae-Won, she fabricates a small story to ensure her mother does not notice, managing to conceal the truth. Chae-Won's mother, noticing the late hour, asks her to take a shower and go to bed. Obediently, Chae-Won rises and heads toward her room, hoping that her mother will recognize her growing independence and the steps she is taking toward adulthood. However, to her surprise, as she enters her room, she finds Chae-Won already there. Startled, Chae-Won immediately questions her sister about why she has come into her room at this hour. Chae-Won explains that she cannot sleep in her own room and recalls that Chae-Won had previously told her she could come in whenever she could not sleep in hers. Chae-Won, slightly annoyed, reminds her sister that the offer she had made more than a year ago has expired, arguing that she has been considerate enough given her own preparations for the upcoming CSAT exams. Seizing the opportunity, Chae-Won decides to make a bold declaration, telling Chae-Won to give up on Yu-chan as she informs her that she has already started going out with him. This revelation catches Chae-Won off guard, but she hides her surprise and pretends to be indifferent, jokingly instructing Chae-Won to wear a nose mask and quarantine herself in case she might contact the HOVID. This provokes Chae-Won's anger, and she responds firmly, revealing to her sister that she and Yu-chan have indeed started seeing each other and have been spending quality time together like a real couple. She warns Chae-Won to stop bothering Yu-chan, a statement that shocks her sister and leaves her feeling disappointed. Yet Chae-Won calmly points out that she, too, has already spent enjoyable moments with Yu-chan and reminds Chae-Won that she was actually the first to spend significant time with him. At first, Chae-Won doubts her sister's claim, thinking she might be exaggerating or lying, but Chae-Won insists on the truth of her words. Chae-Won further observes that Chae-Won is clearly attempting to get closer to Yu-chan in hopes of capturing his attention, and Chae-Won openly confirms that this is indeed her motive. The sheer confidence in her sister's declaration surprises Chae-Won, who did not expect such audacity. Nevertheless, Chae-Won asserts that even with all her efforts, someone like Chae-Won cannot easily win Yu-chan's attention. Recognizing the conversation has reached its limit, Chae-Won decides to chase Chae-Won out of her room so she can continue her CSAT preparations and spend time with Yu-chan without further interruptions. Chae-Won leaves, casually reminding her sister that getting into a much better college than the one Chae-Won is enrolled in is not an issue for her, and then she exits the room. It is the day of the national mock exam, and strict regulations are announced, stating that the examination will proceed under the close supervision of the CDC. Despite some voices of objection from the public, the Minister of Education insists that the CSAT cannot be delayed any further. As students arrive at the exam hall, their temperatures are checked at the entrance to ensure safety before they are allowed to enter. Once inside, exam papers are distributed, and the students are instructed not to open them until given the official signal to begin. Among them, Chae-Won sits anxiously at her desk, her mind racing with tension and worry, waiting for the moment the exam will officially start. A few days later, when Yu-chan learns about Chae-Won's distress and disappointment over her poor performance in the mock exam, he decides to visit her, bringing along some snacks to cheer her up. Upon arriving at her house, her mother immediately tells him not to bother teaching Chae-Won that day. Yu-chan reassures her that he has no intention of teaching and simply wants to talk to Chae-Won and lift her spirits. He knocks gently on her door, waiting for a response, but when none comes, he quietly enters the room. Inside, he finds Chae-Won sitting alone on her bed, her room darkened with the lights turned off, wearing her pajamas and lost in her thoughts, a solemn expression etched across her face. This is the first time Yu-chan sees Chae-Won looking so depressed, and it strikes him deeply. He tells her that, since he heard she skipped breakfast, he brought some snacks for her, though he is unsure if she will like them. Upon hearing this, Chae-Won turns to look at the snack he has brought, curiosity flickering across her face, and then tells him that she will eat some if he eats with her. Yu-chan smiles, arranges the snacks for her, and sits down beside her as she begins eating. Actually, Yu-chan had completely forgotten that Chae-Won had recently taken a mock exam. It is only 2 days after the exam that he receives a call from Chae-Won's mother, informing him that he cannot teach her that day. Curious, Yu-chan asks what the problem is, and her mother explains that Chae-Won has been deeply depressed ever since her mock exam results were released because the scores were far worse than she had expected. According to her mother, Chae-Won has been crying and throwing tantrums at home ever since, unable to come to terms with her disappointing performance. Concerned, Yoo-chun decides to check online for information about the CSAT, and he discovers reports indicating that the exam that year caused mass confusion among students, as many of them struggled to find clear answers to the questions. Later, Chae-Won's mother calls him back to ask whether he can visit Chae-Won the following day, even though he cannot give her a lesson. Understanding the situation, Yoo-chun agrees, and that is how he ends up visiting their house. Not long after he arrives, Chae-Won finishes eating the snacks he brought, but she still has crumbs and small particles lingering on her face. Yoo-chun gently helps her brush them away, and in that quiet moment, she surprises him by asking whether he knows that he is the reason her grades have dropped. Yoo-chun is stunned by the allegation and struggles to understand how he could possibly be responsible for her poor performance. Chae-Won then explains that she has been unable to concentrate on her studies because she keeps thinking about spending time with Yoo-chun and cherishing his company. Yoo-chun is even more shocked, realizing that her distraction stems from the moments they share together, and he cannot have imagined that their time together could have such an impact on her studies. Despite this revelation, he still feels uncertain about how it could be his fault, but Chae-Won continues to insist that it is, pointing out that they regularly spend time together after each lesson every week. She explains that because they had skipped a lesson during the week she was preparing for the mock exam, she found it impossible to focus without thinking about him and missing his presence. As Yoo-chun reflects on the situation, guilt begins to settle in, particularly because during that skipped week, he had actually been spending time with Chae-Won. He apologizes sincerely to Chae-Won, asking her what he can do to make things right. At that moment, Chae-Won's mood suddenly shifts. She notices that he has not even taken a bite of the snack and reminds him that the reason she agreed to eat it herself was because he had promised to eat with her. She playfully but insistently offers him the snack, urging him to take a bite. Left with no choice, Yoo-chun complies, and before he can even process it, Chae-Won moves closer to him, creating another opportunity to enjoy each other's company. Yoo-chun, overwhelmed by his guilty conscience over her disappointment, finds himself unable to resist. Chae-Won sits in her room, arms crossed, frustrated. She feels that Chae-Won acts as if preparing for the CSAT makes her special, receiving treatment she doesn't deserve. Chae-Won resents how Chae-Won's mistakes on a mock exam somehow delay her own PT session and monopolize Yoo-chun's attention. No matter what she does, their mother always defends Chae-Won as the older sister's prerogative. A flashback reminds Chae-Won of a recent conversation with their mother. When she complained about the unfairness, her mother explained that Chae-Won specifically asked for Yoo-chun, showing her dependence, and that Chae-Won, as the older sister, should be considerate. This only fuels Chae-Won's frustration, making her feel unappreciated and overshadowed. She wishes life had been different, imagining that if their roles were reversed, she would be the one getting spoiled. On top of this, Yoo-chun's behavior irritates her. Since the incident between them, he acts distant, formal, and measured, clearly creating a barrier and avoiding unnecessary interaction. As Yoo-chun prepares to leave, he tells Chae-Won's mother that she doesn't need to see him off every time. She smiles, noting that her daughter seems more energetic lately, leaving Yoo-chun unsure how to respond. He simply nods. Chae-Won heads out as well, saying she's taking a walk to relax and deciding to accompany Yoo-chun home. Her mother frowns, warning that she might catch a cold, but Chae-Won is unconcerned. Walking side by side in the cool night air, Chae-Won suddenly mentions feeling warm. Yoo-chun casually suggests she unzip her jacket, but then pauses, realizing she is following him. His eyes briefly scan her outfit, noticing details he hadn't before. Chae-Won, sensing his gaze, casually assures him that it's fine since no one is around. Chae-Won sneaks into Chae-Won's room, determined to find evidence of what her sister has been up to. She locks the door behind her and searches Chae-Won's drawer, hoping to find the condoms Chae-Won received for her birthday. The room smells unusually fresh, making Chae-Won suspect that Chae-Won cleaned up to hide everything. The drawer contains only a single pen, and the trash can is completely empty, fueling Chae-Won's frustration. Later that night, Yoo-chun walks with Chae-Won along quiet streets. He still doesn't understand why she insisted on following him, but he doesn't ask. Chae-Won complains about feeling sweaty beneath her mask, prompting Yoo-chun to slow his pace so she can walk beside him. She carries the conversation effortlessly while he feels awkward and uncertain. Chae-Won removes her mask, and Yoo-chun instinctively glances at her. She notices, but he attributes his look to concern over her worried expression. She adjusts her coat, seemingly trying to ease his worries, but Yoo-chun remains cautious, warning her about catching a cold. Chae-Won enjoys the cool night air, while Yuchan reflects that the stressful emotions she feels now will likely fade after the entrance exams. She challenges his assumption by questioning whether he truly believes the pandemic will end, leaving him momentarily uncertain. Yuchan senses that something is weighing on Chae-Won, even if she hasn't said it. Deciding that cheering her up is more important than giving a perfectly truthful answer, he assures her that the pandemic will definitely end. He explains that health workers are working on vaccines and that staying safe with masks will help, offering a lie wrapped in hope. Chae-Won feels relieved and comforted by his positivity, which lifts Yuchan's own mood as well. As they continue walking, Chae-Won unexpectedly takes Yuchan's hand, enjoying the warmth and deciding to hold it until they reach the bus stop. Yuchan is surprised and awkward, noticing the casual affection, but reasoning that her hands might get cold. Chae-Won dismisses his concern, tightening her grip slightly and teasing him about being embarrassed. Yuchan reflects on how holding hands once felt effortless, but now feels strangely awkward in public. When they arrive at the bus stop, Yuchan reminds her he has to catch the bus. Chae-Won finally releases his hand, but asks him to remove his mask. When he does, she leans in and lightly kisses his cheek. The unexpected gesture shocks Yuchan, leaving him frozen and replaying the moment in his mind, still touched and unable to process it fully. Meanwhile, Chae-Won returns home and almost mistakes Chae-Won for their mother standing in the doorway. Chae-Won, arms crossed, is there to investigate and confirm whether Chae-Won really did what she suspects, leaving Chae-Won feeling apprehensive and on edge. Chae-Won demands to know if Chae-Won really did it, but Chae-Won dismisses her concern and heads into her room, telling her to stay quiet so she can focus. Frustrated and without answers, Chae-Won goes to her own room. Lying on her bed, she reflects on the situation and becomes convinced that Yuchan is involved with Chae-Won. Determined to compete, she decides to improve herself and starts researching fitness tips to make her training sessions more effective. Meanwhile, Yuchan arrives at his apartment, changes into his gym clothes, and focuses on his workout routine. Thoughts of Chae-Won's unexpected kiss and casual behavior replay in his mind, but he pushes them aside, keeping his attention on exercising. Later, Yuchan goes to the Seol family residence for Chae-Won's PT session. He notices her unusually high energy and motivation and asks about Chae-Won. Chae-Won deflects and instead confronts him about his recent distant behavior, insisting they can be less formal around each other. She mentions Chae-Won hasn't been feeling well and expresses her own determination to work hard for her sister. Yuchan observes her enthusiasm and comments positively. Chae-Won urges him to start the session, and Yuchan begins with a warm-up before moving on to more intense exercises. Sometime later, Chae-Won pants heavily from exertion, but unlike usual, she refuses to give up. She insists she can continue and asks about the next exercise, surprising Yuchan with her determination. Normally, she would be complaining by this point. Before continuing, Chae-Won takes a quick bathroom break. While away, she reflects on her decision to research training techniques beforehand, feeling that it was worthwhile. She resolves to push herself as hard as possible. A little later, Chae-Won returns, fully committed, and resumes her training with renewed focus and determination. Chae-Won sits slumped in her chair, her entire body feeling drained from the hours she has spent buried in her studies. Her hair is slightly messy, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion, and her eyes dull from staring at her textbooks for far too long. At this point, even lifting her pen feels like an impossible task. Deciding that she has reached her limit for the night, she slowly gets up from her chair, stretching her stiff limbs as she lets out a tired sigh. Without much thought, she drags her sluggish body out of her room and makes her way to Chae-Won's. Instead of saying anything, she simply climbs onto the upper bunk of the bed and buries herself under the blanket, seeking comfort in the familiar space. Somewhere in the background, their mother's voice echoes through the house, mentioning that she is heading to the bank. But Chae-Won, already halfway into sleep, barely registers the words. Yuchan apologizes as he arrives, asking if Chae-Won has been waiting long. He explains that he ended up sweating a lot during his workout, so he had to take a shower before coming over. Chae-Won, watching him settle in, casually remarks that she's glad she never signed up for personal training, making it clear that she has no interest in putting herself through that kind of exhaustion. Yuchan agrees with her statement, telling her that she shouldn't overdo it anyway. His attention shifts to her bangs, which she has pinned up differently than usual. Curious about the change, he comments on it, and Chae-Won simply responds that she has something to take care of later, leaving it at that. Turning to the main reason he came, Yuchan begins going through her essay, carefully checking for errors. As he reads, he explains the necessary corrections and highlights the key points that she should focus on improving. After going over everything with her, he decides that they should stop for the day, knowing that she already has enough on her plate. Chae-Won, leaning back slightly, acknowledges how close the entrance exams are now. With only a month left, the student ability test, the crucial entrance exam, looms ahead. She mentions that with the previous delays, the pressure feels even greater, and it's obvious that she must be feeling the weight of it all. Yu-chan advises her to take care of herself, reminding her that even if personal training isn't an option, he can still guide her through a simple workout to help her stay active without overexerting herself. Later that night, at Yu-chan's place, the sound of his phone ringing pulls him from his sleep. Groggily, he reaches for it, answering without checking the caller ID. The voice on the other end belongs to Chae-Won. Her tone is casual, yet there's something about the way she speaks that makes him pause. She states that she's alone and tells him that he has to come over to her place. Chae-Won sits in her room scrolling through news about the repeated postponements of the CSAT. A smirk forms on her lips. No matter how many times the test is delayed, she believes she will be the ultimate winner. Chae-Won should stay in her room and focus quietly on studying. Her thoughts turn to Yu-chan and his blunt, straightforward personality. His annoyingly sincere and composed manner makes her even more certain that he will be hers. Meanwhile, Yu-chan leaves his residence, adjusting the scarf and mask covering his face. The layers feel stuffy and uncomfortable, and he mutters about the hassle. The streets are quiet at this hour, with the usual city noise reduced to an unsettling stillness. He looks at the empty sidewalks and dimly lit buildings, wondering why he is out so late. He is here only because Chae-Won asked him to come. Despite knowing better, he follows through. He glances at his phone and opens the call log, staring at Chae-Won's name, thinking about what she might be planning. A brief memory flashes in his mind. Earlier, when Chae-Won called, he instinctively asked what was wrong. She casually says that she thought of him as she was falling asleep and wanted him to come over. She says she will be waiting for him. At that moment, he feels only frustration. Ignoring her might lead to retaliation, so he debates whether to go. Another message appears from her, written in another language, forcing him to use a translator. The hidden meaning in her words convinces him to sigh and leave his apartment. Now on public transit, Yu-chan stares out the window, lost in thought. He keeps circling back to the nature of his relationship with Chae-Won. To an outside observer, it might look like a normal dating relationship. A girl asking a guy to visit her at daybreak is not typical friendship behavior. He recognizes this, but cannot define exactly what they are. A troubling thought follows. Chae-Won is not the only girl he is involved with. The weight of the thought lingers as he remembers a conversation with Ming-Yu. Ming-Yu once mentions casually that he meets many girls at the same time. Yu-chan never thinks of him as a scumbag, but the situation makes him reflect. He recalls asking Ming-Yu if he ever considers how the girls will see him. Ming-Yu responds without concern, saying it does not matter as long as he is attractive. He adds that it is just a joke, and that if the girls think otherwise, there is nothing he can do. The conversation with Ming-Yu had shifted earlier when he reminded Yu-chan that they had known each other for a long time. Their personalities were polar opposites, which could have caused conflict, yet their friendship lasted all these years. According to Ming-Yu, the reason was simple. He enjoyed it. Back in the present, Yu-chan reflects on those words, realizing that 10 years have passed since Ming-Yu said them. The memory lingers as he wonders if Ming-Yu still believes it is acceptable to have multiple partners, as long as both parties enjoy each other's company. Yu-chan's situation, however, is different. He is involved with 2 sisters, and one of them is also his student. That fact makes him feel like absolute trash. The weight of it presses down on him, but despite the guilt, he knows the truth. He likes both of them. Chae-Won has a side he never fully understands. Her unpredictability and complexity pull him back in, no matter how much he tries to resist. It frustrates him, yet it also makes her impossible to ignore. Chae-Won, in contrast, is genuine and transparent. Her straightforward expression of feelings leaves no room for confusion. She does not play games or hide her emotions. Her simplicity has its own charm. Caught between them, Yu-chan feels unsure who he should choose. In her room, Chae-Won picks up her phone and sends instructions for Yu-chan's visit. He should take the elevator only when he is 2 or 3 floors below hers, then use the stairs to avoid making noise. A short while later, her phone vibrates with his reply, letting her know he is already at the doorway, though he worries about getting inside without being noticed. Without replying, Chae-Won quietly moves to the door, unlocks it, and opens it just enough for Yu-chan to slip in. She gestures for him to enter and stay quiet. Yu-chan follows, feeling his heartbeat quicken the moment he steps inside. Every step toward her room makes his pulse race, and when they finally close the door behind them, Yu-chan and Chae-Won sit together in the quiet of her room, the air thick with unspoken words. Yuchan hesitates for a moment before speaking, making sure this is the right time for her to talk. Chae-Won immediately affirms it, her patience slightly fraying at the need for confirmation. Taking a breath, Yuchan steadies himself and says he also has something to share. Chae-Won tenses slightly at his words, unsettled by the unusual weight in his expression. His face carries a finality she has never seen before. A quiet panic rises in her chest as a troubling thought crosses her mind. She had assumed he would follow her lead without resistance, no matter the uncertainty. Now, as he opens his mouth, a deep sense of dread settles within her. She does not want to hear what comes next, and almost tells him to stop. But Yuchan speaks first, confessing he has been with her sister. He explains that he planned to tell her sooner and was not hiding it, though he was not ready to say it. Their unclear relationship left him unsure if he should say anything at all. He lowers his gaze and apologizes for not telling her earlier, then admits he has thought about their relationship deeply. He acknowledges that what he says makes him seem like a terrible person, but honesty is necessary. He cannot date her, but hopes to continue things as they are if she agrees. Silence follows. Chae-Won does not react immediately, staring at his face as she processes every word. She does not lash out, cry, or push him away. Instead, she calmly reveals that she already knew about him and her sister. She thanks him for finding the courage to tell her himself. Then, as if realizing something new, she breathes quietly and admits she may be in bigger trouble than she thought. Even hearing words that should hurt leaves her feeling fine. She decides not to force him to choose if his heart cannot decide. Understanding this, she moves closer and wraps her arms around him in a quiet embrace. The next morning, Yuchan wakes slowly and realizes with a jolt that he fell asleep at Chae-Won's place. Panic rushes through him as he frantically puts his clothes back on, trying to process the situation. Before he can think further, Chae-Won stirs, her eyes fluttering open. Yuchan, filled with regret, rushes to her, his mind racing through every possible disaster if anyone finds out. Chae-Won, however, stays calm, sitting up slowly and reassuring him that there is nothing to worry about. She reminds him that no one can enter her room without permission and promises to sneak him out later. Without hurry, she heads to the bathroom to freshen up. Yuchan watches her in disbelief, his heart pounding as he wonders what gives her such confidence in a risky situation. After getting ready, Chae-Won goes to the dining table where her mother and sister sit. She takes a small portion of food and grabs a single banana. Her mother notices and questions if it's enough, and Chae-Won replies briefly that it is, excusing herself. Chae-Won, however, notices her sister's unusual behavior and quietly begins to feel suspicious. Chae-Won does not linger and heads straight back to her room, slipping inside quickly. Upon entering, she stops in confusion. Yuchan is nowhere to be seen. Her eyes scan the room until Yuchan finally appears from his hiding spot, still tense. He nervously complains that getting caught would have been disastrous. Chae-Won remains calm, brushing off his concerns and reassuring him once again. She hands him the banana, noting it is not much, but at least something to eat. She then tells him to step out of hiding, explaining that her father already left for work and her mother will leave soon. With only her sister left at home, they will have to be extra careful when sneaking him out. Yuchan feels a wave of emotion as he watches Chae-Won. He can't believe a 30-year-old man like him is acting so desperate in front of a barely 20-year-old student, but he forces himself to focus on the more pressing issue. After a while, Chae-Won comes up with an idea, suggesting they make an excuse to get her mother to take Chae-Won out for a while. Before she can act, Yuchan brings up another problem. He hesitates, but admits he needs to use the bathroom, and Chae-Won quickly leads him there. On their way back, Chae-Won suddenly appears. Chae-Won shoves Yuchan into her room and drops into a yoga pose to cover the movement. Suspicious, Chae-Won asks what she's doing. Chae-Won lies, claiming she is practicing yoga. It seems unnatural, but Chae-Won lets it go and advises her to take care of her health. Once Chae-Won leaves, Chae-Won rushes back into her room. Yuchan exhales in relief. They haven't been caught. Shortly after, Chae-Won asks their mother if they can go out together, and she agrees. Before leaving, Chae-Won knocks on Chae-Won's door, offering to buy her something. Chae-Won refuses, and the sisters finally leave. After the door shuts, Chae-Won checks to make sure they're gone. Seeing the coast is clear, she tells Yuchan to leave immediately, instructing him to use the stairs first and the elevator afterward to avoid suspicion. Yuchan nods silently, grateful, and steps out of the room. Just as he starts to feel safe, fate turns against him. Chae-Won remembers she left her phone at home and tells their mother she needs to go back, rushing ahead. Meanwhile, Yuchan walks through the building, torn between relief and fear, imagining the consequences if he gets caught. Stepping outside, his relief ends. He bumps directly into Chae-Won. Panic seizes him, and he freezes, scrambling for an explanation. Chae-Won stares at him, but instead of shock or anger, she simply demands to know everything from the very beginning. Yuchan freezes when he comes face to face with Chae-Won, her expression unreadable. Her sudden appearance leaves him stunned. She immediately demands that he tell her everything from the very beginning. Seeing her face, Yuchan realizes she already knows. There is no point in pretending anymore. His mind races, wondering what to do or say. He knows the situation is about to get complicated, but running is not an option. Taking a deep breath, he decides to be honest and face whatever comes next. Slowly, he confesses that he has been in a relationship with Chae-Won for some time, starting shortly after he began tutoring her. He admits that he is on his way home after spending the night with her. He had believed he would not get caught. Apologizing, he admits all the lies and pretending, saying he is ready to accept whatever punishment Chae-Won chooses. Closing his eyes, he waits for her reaction, half expecting anger or a lash. After a few seconds, there is only silence. Confused, he cautiously opens his eyes. Chae-Won's expression is calm, but her next words shock him. She asks who he likes more between her and Chae-Won. Yuchan hesitates, knowing his answer could change everything. After a moment, he admits that he likes Chae-Won just a little more, by 0.1 points. Chae-Won's expression darkens immediately, anger flashing in her eyes. She asks if he thinks this is a joke. Yuchan shakes his head, insisting he is serious. She scoffs, crossing her arms, and says his behavior is not that of a playboy but just a blockhead. Since he was honest, she decides to forgive him. Before leaving, she asks again if he really thinks the difference is only 0.1. Yuchan nods, unsure what will come next. Chae-Won puts on her cap and smirks, explaining that she only stepped out briefly after informing their mother. Without looking back, she walks away, telling him she would appreciate honesty from now on. As she heads back, Chae-Won thinks to herself, as the older sister, she cannot back down now. She knows Chae-Won will be busy studying for the CSATS, the biggest exams of her life. For the next month, Chae-Won will focus entirely on her studies, leaving Chae-Won free to spend time with Yuchan. A confident smirk forms on her lips as she realizes that if she uses this time wisely and exceeds his expectations, it will be game over. Chae-Won soon meets her mother, who is shopping for cosmetics. Looking at the products, she decides to pick out a few for herself, thinking that if she is going to do this, she might as well make herself look even prettier. Meanwhile, back in her room, Chae-Won leans against her desk, lost in thought. She knows she will not see Yuchan for a while because of her intense study schedule. Deciding to tease him a little, she smiles mischievously, thinking that she will hold back for now, but once her CSATs are over, she will be more honest with him. At the same time, Yuchan sits in his residence with a book in his hands. Just as he is about to start reading, his phone rings. It is Chae-Won. Her voice is calm as she explains that she was in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID, so she has to quarantine for 2 weeks. Surprised, Yuchan asks where she is now. She says she is staying at a friend's house since her mother worries about Chae-Won getting infected. Her friend allows her to stay until she recovers or tests negative. Yuchan reassures her, telling her to take care of herself, wear a mask, and stay cautious so she will likely test negative soon. After the call, Yuchan sighs and checks his schedule. Chae-Won has paused tutoring to study for exams, and Chae-Won is in quarantine and cannot do personal training. That leaves him completely free for the next 2 weeks. Realizing this, he decides to focus on himself and goes to the gym to work out. The moment he arrives, he notices someone waiting near the entrance, Min-jung. Her eyes light up as she sees him, and she grins, looking as if she has been eagerly waiting just for him. Yuchan then asks Min-jung if she has been waiting for him all along, and she nods her head in agreement. Yuchan is shocked as he wonders why she would come to him. After all, the gym has no people using it because of the COVID restrictions, so he knows the only person who would come to such a gym is him alone. But from the expression Min-jung is giving, he can tell that she needs something urgent. Yuchan is already thinking about the kind of relationship he could have with someone that makes her come to him, not knowing that he is saying that loud, but Min-jung just pleads with him to help her move the equipment. Later, Min-jung gets the hold of him when he mentions relationship, so she asks what he means by that, and he replies that he thinks she is talking about gym session. Yuchan then later considers helping her, since he already puts her in a difficult situation, so he asks for the specific thing she needs help with, and Min-jung replies that there's actually quite a lot he would help her with after he has changed his clothes. So Yuchan goes to get changed and get right to work, as he helps Minjung move some equipment. After about 3 hours, Yuchan is already tired, as he feels like even though he could have put Minjung through a lot, yet he feels like they could have just used movers for those equipment instead. However, they are done though, and while he is still seated thinking, Minjung comes in to hand him a drink, as she commends him for his hard work, knowing fully well that she cannot have moved all those things by herself. Even though Yuchan collects the drink, he wonders if Minjung thinks he would just be fine with the drink alone, even after that hard work. But surprisingly, Minjung lets him know that she will be paying him a day's worth of work for that particular day. Yuchan is shocked when he hears he would be getting paid for the day. Then Minjung is about to send it to him through Kakao Talk, but her phone is not with her, so she turns back to go and get her phone. But that is when she slips over and her drink pours. But before she lands on the floor, Yuchan gets a grip of her and makes her lay on him instead.